Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Bauman. Bethany LaShell joins us today to talk about what she calls midlife Christianity. Bethany and some of her friends have been experiencing things like divorce, financial changes, parenting adult children, and caring for aging parents. The pressures of these midlife events have Bethany asking the question, how do changes in our lives affect our relationship with Jesus? It was fun to have this woman-to-woman conversation about how we are invited to grow as a Jesus follower through every season of our life. Let's listen in. Hello, Steady On friends. Welcome to this week's Stronger Together conversation. I'm Angie Bauman, and my guest today is Bethany LaShell. Welcome, Bethany. We're so happy to have you and learn from you. I've been looking forward to this for a while because today we're going to talk about something that really had never crossed my mind. I'm just being honest, but when us girls put our heads together, one of the things that Bethany's passionate about is talking about midlife Christianity and kind of how what I've called it is kind of how our relationship with Jesus changes as we do. And so, Bethany, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. Bethany is a writer, a speaker, a copy editor, and also an educator, a tutor, former educator at high school and college level, a homeschool guru. That's probably not the right word. Extraordinaire.
Hi there.
How about that one? Makes her home in South Carolina. And so what else would you like us to know about you, Bethany, before we get started into this?
Cats and chocolate and caffeine make my day run.
Okay. I got to poke on that just a little bit. What kind of chocolate is your preferred? Because all chocolate is not created equal.
Well, I don't discriminate a whole lot, but honestly, I like the milk chocolate and the white chocolate because, give me the sweet.
Yes. White chocolate is very sweet. I'm a dark chocolate girl, preferably dark chocolate with like nuts inside, almonds or something.
Ooh.
Yes,
See,
I like that
I don't
very
discriminate.
much.
I would eat that too.
And then caffeine. Okay, what's your caffeine of choice? Are you a coffee girl?
I'm a Diet Coke girl.
Me too.
Oh.
All right. And specifically, I know this is all like real important to our Christian walk, but what's your Diet Coke of choice?
The 16-ounce bottles.
Like actually Diet Coke, like Diet Coke.
Oh, Diet Coke.
Okay, Diet Coke. All right. You just got to know these things. We got to know. So yeah.
My mom drinks the Diet Dr. Pepper, but like the Walmart brand. So it does make a difference.
It does make a difference. Yes, it does. So when I reached out to you, because we're Flourish Writers friends, acquaintances, and when I first reached out to you about doing an interview, the topic you suggested was this idea of midlife Christianity. So talk to us just for a few minutes about what that is to you and why you're passionate about it. Why is that something that you've given thought and prayer?
Well, my mission is to walk with Christian women through the hard places of midlife toward the redemption and hope that we find in grace, forgiveness, and authenticity. I've gone through a whole lot of stuff in the last 8 years specifically. And one thing that, as I was kind of coming out of the real hard stuff, one thing that God impressed on me was that He was not going to waste any of my suffering. And a lot of times I felt alone. 2 Corinthians 1 tells us that Jesus is the one who comforts us in our affliction so that we may be able to comfort others who are in any affliction. So I feel like that may not be the main reason why I went through a lot of what I went through, but that's the redemption that I'm taking out of it. That's what I want to take from it.
I think that I think we can really spin our wheels. What do you think about this? When we're looking for a reason, because I don't know. A lot of times, I think even if we had a reason, it's not reason enough for what we went through, right? I mean, we go
Absolutely.
through it, and so, but we're tempted. If I can just understand, then it would be okay. And we cannot understand some of the things that we go through, and so all of it. I go to the Genesis 50:20, right? What you meant to harm me, God meant for good, or the Romans 8:28. That He can use all things for good, and so absolutely, and to the degree that we believe in that and walk in that belief, right? is the reason, if you're actually
Right.
looking for one, not the reason that it happened, but the way that it can be used for something positive in all of us. So yeah.
Yes.
So what are some of the, not necessarily yours, but what are some of the big issues here? Before I even do that, how would you define midlife? Let's do that real quick.
Well, yesterday I had two little ponytails bouncing along on either side of me. And now I'm going to be turning 50 in a couple weeks, or not in
Okay.
a couple weeks. No, let's not rush this. A couple
No.
months.
Oh.
There we go. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I look around and I see all these young women, and by young I mean, younger than I am. And
Mm-hmm.
they've got the young kids and they're bemoaning the diapers and the being up late at night. And I see moms of teenagers struggling with things, and I'm like, well, I've already been there.
Mm-hmm.
I know what that's like. And when you get to this age, you're stuck between your 20-year-old who calls and says, how do I boil an egg? And what's my health insurance number? And then you're stuck between that and your parents who are, going through all kinds of health crises.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have lost their parents. Um, you've gone through, some people have gone through a divorce, or you've
Mm-hmm.
lost a spouse through
Mm-hmm.
death, health issues, job changes, job issues. You've just gone through a lot of stuff. I certainly feel like my life is not over yet by any
Mm-hmm.
means. But yet I feel like I've got more experience to talk to some younger people, or people who are going through a lot of this hard stuff in life.
I'm still in the thick of mothering, if you will. My kids are still at
Mhm.
home. I have a 10-year-old, almost 11, and a 16-year-old. So I've got a lot of years with kids still in the house. But one of the things that I think we're tempted to do in this season, and I know some of my friends have done this, and I've got several friends whose kids are gone now, either in college or later than that. And we're tempted, when the kids are gone, then my life will be. Like, we have this idea, maybe always we do, like when we're younger, when I'm married, my life will be, when we're married, when I have kids, my life. And so I think we always maybe think of the next season as the one that will be, I don't know, simpler. And I think
Mhm.
that I think when the kids are gone and you've looked at that, sometimes for some of my friends, especially, that's when some of the deepest struggles have really surfaced, in terms of, I
Mhm.
thought my life was going in this direction, and then, like you say, through a divorce, a death, estrangement from adult children, or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be, there's really some deep pain for them, which can influence greatly our relationship with Jesus. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so how do you think then that our relationship with Jesus changes in light of some of these like big issues that sometimes surface in midlife?
Well, this saying is not original to me, but when you find out that Jesus is all you have, you find out that Jesus is all you really need.
Yeah, talk
Um,
about that some more. Yeah.
about, well,
Hmm.
about 7, 8 years ago, I lost, in a year's time, like 12, 18 months time, I lost my marriage, my car, finances, my home, more than one job, partial custody of my younger child, my parents' health, my health, church, friends. I mean, all kinds of things just like stripped away, all of it. Um, and I found out that, yes, those things are important, but the 5-bedroom house with the pool, that wasn't the most important thing. Um, I found out that when Jesus was there at the
Hmm.
very bottom, Jesus was there through it all. And I have seen through all of that, I saw Jesus is there, his faithfulness actively at work in my life, through all of those trials. And sometimes it was just a little thing. Sometimes it seemed big at the time, but looking back, it wasn't really.
Hmm.
Um, Never once was I not able to pay rent when I had to start paying rent. Um, we didn't go hungry.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just the basics of it. My car broke down in the middle of the night one time, and somebody said, "Oh, I'll come pick you up." Somebody that I didn't know that well.
Hmm.
Um, I would get unexpected money from over here to pay for this lawyer over there. Um,
And
I
so you could
found
see
friends.
him,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Isn't that part of what
Absolutely.
helps stabilize us when we're going
Mhm.
crazy because we're unstable, right? Or whatever the case
Right.
may be. Is our willingness to find where God is at work.
Right.
One of the things that I say all the time is, God's promises they're many. He has many promises for us,
Mhm.
but they're actually quite simple, and they all revolve around this one truth: I will not leave you. Right? I will
Right.
never leave you. He says that over and
Mhm.
over again in his word, that I will not leave you. And so we have this choice as believers when we're going through something hard, the kinds of things that you're describing that are, practically very distressing, partly because just of the implications of moving and job and car and all those things,
Mhm.
but also because it reminds us that the things that we would like to put our security in actually are corruptible, right? They're not a
Mhm.
guarantee, but the
Right.
guarantee that we have is I will be with you. And so we have this choice as believers to
Mhm.
identify where he's proving that true, because he
Right.
is, like you're saying, in the little places that you're like, this is a mess and I hate it and I wish I wasn't here, but I notice that this went okay, or that this happened, or that this worked
Right.
out, even though I wish I was just back in my bed, right, in my other house. I wish I could go home. I mean, I'm sure there were times like
Uh-huh.
that for you when you were going through that season. um,
Absolutely.
and so definitely I like that idea of a lot of times when we realize we've been putting our hope in the wrong thing
Mhm.
is when we can, at least we have the opportunity to shift and then set our face, if you will, in
Right.
our hope in the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. One of
And
the things that you said to me earlier is that suffering with grace is like a muscle. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. What do you mean by that? That suffering with grace is like a muscle?
um basically the more you do it, the better you get at it. The older you get, the more trials you go through. Um and then I think as you go through more trials, you either get bitter or you get better. Um James talks about that, count it all joy when, my brothers or sisters, when you meet with trials of various kinds. Your testing produces steadfastness, and then you will become basically sanctified through
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm,
So if you let it become bitter, that's when it eats at you. Suffering kind of eats at you from the inside out, which I'll talk about a little bit more.
mm-hmm,
But I think this is applicable, especially this year. Many people, many people, are freaked out and saying how horrible 2020 is. And it is. It's been a hot mess, honestly, um, for many people. And I don't even want to get into that. But for me, I look at 2020 and say, well, I have a house, I have a good job,
mm-hmm,
I have friends, I have my family. Um, I'm not on rock bottom.
mm-hmm,
This
mm-hmm,
is, I mean, it's not great, but
mm-hmm.
it's okay. Just because um, I've been through worse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. When you go through things that are really challenging, it does then change. It can. I wouldn't say it does. It can change our perspective on what
Mhm.
things are really challenging.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this about me. I talk about it quite a bit, but my family was in a head-on car crash in 2010, and I was hurt
Mm.
real bad. My son Alex was hurt real bad. I spent 9 months in rehab, and for a period of time,
Mm.
I could not take care of myself. Right? I did not move from bed to chair to bathroom. I didn't go to the bathroom by myself. I didn't feed myself. I didn't brush my own teeth. I just couldn't. I physically had
Mhm.
no ability to do that. Not to mention, I didn't care for my children who were 6 and 7 months at the time. I didn't run
Ooh.
my house. I didn't
Mhm.
do anything, and I didn't work. I mean, a pastor to church at the time, somebody like that was just like way down on the list, so,
Yeah.
and it does offer
Mm.
the opportunity, and what you're saying is a variety of things that happened that I would suggest, both of us were hit head on, if you will, where you just
Mhm.
kind of, I mean, anybody that's looked at their life And all of a sudden they're like, I don't even recognize this. I don't even
Yep.
recognize this life, right? I think that's the kind of scenario you're painting here. But it does provide the opportunity then to appreciate some things differently and to realize I've gone through very hard times and God was there. And so then when a hard time bubbles up in my life today, there is that memory of he was there when you were struggling then, and he is here when you're struggling now.
Yeah.
And it also can give you the opportunity to be very grateful that you brush your own teeth, right? Is what you're saying. Like it may be 2020 and it may be hard, but I can brush my own teeth and I'm very grateful for that, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Amen.
seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Let's all be glad we can brush our own teeth. Let's talk about the concept of forgiveness, because I know that is anytime you go through, I mean, even like my situation, even though it was a car crash, someone fell asleep, crossed the center line. So it is kind of easy to want to blame someone else for your trouble, is it not? We can always
Oh,
find
yes.
someone else did something that got me into this situation. And so I think no matter what, when we deal with that kind of like head-on life, crash kind of situation, there is the opportunity, the need to examine where forgiveness is necessary. And so what's that been like for you in some of the things that you've been through, that forgiveness process? And how has that impacted, and what do you think that for us, how does that impact our relationship with Jesus?
It absolutely impacts our relationship with Jesus. When you go through all these hard things, if you don't forgive, you build up a wall of bitterness. It's brick after brick after brick, bitterness, bitterness, bitterness. And before you know it, you're back here and everyone else is out here. And I think sometimes, like you mentioned, our temptation is to blame other people.
Sure.
And yeah, a lot of times other people are at fault.
Have some
for
kind
a
of
car crash.
responsibility. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Just somebody else filed bankruptcy.
Right.
Somebody else didn't pay the mortgage,
Yeah. Right.
and I had no part in that.
Right.
And so we want to blame other people. But I think something that as Christians we tend not to say a lot is we want to blame God.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Because, well, if God really loved me, he wouldn't let me go through this. If God really loved me, he would, honor that prayer that I made for, a spouse who loved God instead of somebody else. Whatever. So we can't do that, because when you keep that bitterness inside, it eats at you. That hard stuff eats at you from the inside out. And I know we all know people who are negative and their whole demeanor is sour and mean and rude, and they're just bitter and angry. I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
I don't. And I don't want to be around people like that, which means I can't live like that. And I think a lot of there's a misconception, and I wrote about this recently on my blog. There's a misconception that forgiveness is letting somebody else off the hook.
Yes.
Or it's forgetting all about what happened, saying,
Yes.
oh, it's fine, it's no big deal. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. It's not a feeling, it's an action that you choose to do. And it's basically giving up your right to resentment, retribution, and revenge.
Say that again. It's giving up your right to revenge, retribution,
and resentment.
And resentment. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's refusing to revisit the offense in your mind and with your words or actions. Your husband,
like playing the loop.
Yeah.
Stop watching the rerun of what happened.
Right. And I have in the past been guilty of the cold shoulder. Yeah, I forgive you. But I'm going to give you a cold shoulder for the next 2 days. That's not forgiveness. It's not. Forgiveness is not earned. And the other piece, and one other piece is that it's God's job to bring about justice. That's not my job. And where did I read this? I think I read it in a Beth Moore study probably, that God sees every single tear that
Mm.
falls. He sees every single injustice. He sees every single wrong, and he will right it. It
Mm-hmm.
may not be in our time. In fact, it probably will not be on our timetable. And it may not look like what we want it to look like. But that's not my job.
Right.
That's his job. And I have forgiven many things throughout the years, but some of the really big stuff was still kind of lingering, and I wasn't even aware. And two things kind of brought it to my attention. One thing, I was talking about my ex-husband, and a friend said, "You should never talk about him. You are so bitter." I'm like, wait, what? Really? Because I just, it had become part of me, I guess, and I hadn't even realized it. The other thing, in my day job as a writer and an editor for this ministry, I was asked to write a chapter for a book on forgiveness. And at first I thought, oh, well, that's way easier than the chapter my coworker's writing on. Sure, no problem. And then I started digging into it. I'm like, really, God? Really?
Mm-hmm.
So God and I had to do some business, and I did write about this on my blog also.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you that true forgiveness brings a freedom like nothing else. That bitterness takes up a whole lot of emotional energy. And it is not worth hanging on to. It
I
just is
think
not.
I think it's Brene Brown that says forgiveness is accepting the past cannot change. And that was a huge concept for me when I
Right.
was dealing with some unforgiveness in my life, is that
Mm-hmm.
it's not saying it's okay. It's not saying it doesn't affect me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying I want to be reconciled in relationship with
Right.
you. It's
Right.
accepting that what happened
Mm-hmm.
happened and it's not going to change.
Right.
And having being able to, like you said, not replay it, not wrestle
Mm-hmm.
with it. Just this is the reality. This is what
Yeah.
happened to me. I lost my house, right? He fell asleep and hit us. Like, I mean, this
Yes.
is it. And in order to really let go of it and move on, you have to stop inventing ways that the story can unfold differently, because it
Yeah.
can't, right? Yeah.
Right.
And I
It's,
think,
yeah.
yeah, there's a peace in the acceptance. I think that's what she's pointing to, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
peace in the acceptance when we realize this is my story, and
Right.
I have to move forward from here because there is no
Mm-hmm.
choice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because we get so stuck, I think we get so stuck in if I had only, or if they had only, then my
Mm-hmm.
life, dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's just ground again for the enemy to help us plant seeds of either resentment or, I don't know, even self-righteousness, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
discontent too, I
Oh, good.
think.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Well, and I
Absolutely.
was talking about that with somebody last night. Well, if I had da 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 da, then this, I said, well, how do you know though? You don't
Right.
know.
Yes.
You
Again, it's
can't
like
play
the
that game.
seasons when we're looking at, well, my life right now is like this, but when this happens, then my life will be simpler, or it will be better, or will be whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can't play that game.
And
You
you
just
can't,
can't.
yes, but we not though? We do.
Oh yes, we
I
do.
mean, like, even in smaller ways, like I know we have so many writer friends. I know you, like, some of my friends that are writers, if I get a book deal, then I will, then
Yeah.
you will start a lot of edits and revisions, because you like, I mean, like the reality, right?
Oh
Life will not
yes.
be easy when you get, I mean, just anything like that though, when we're like placing our hope in something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus is the hope, who's the anchor for our soul.
Yeah.
You can't place your hope in the next season or the
Mm-hmm.
next book deal
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
the next whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
can't.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Well, let's talk about authenticity. I know that's something that, especially as you are sharing, one of the things that you shared with me is that you've had opportunity to really just be encouraging. The scripture that you used at the very beginning, use your life experiences, some of them that have been really hard, to speak truth into the lives of some of your friends who are going through really difficult, maybe some dark places with some serious things that they're dealing with. And so, what are you learning about the difference between being willing to share what you're learning or what you've been through, or trying to, because aren't we so tempted sometimes to create this facade, this I'm fine, everything's good kind of attitude. So talk to me just a little bit about your feelings around that.
Years ago, I lost a really good friend because I was trying too hard to be perfect. And I didn't realize at the time, and it took me a long time to realize that that was actually at the root of it. And she kind of shared later, I had all this and this going on, and you just had the perfect life. Well, I didn't. If I had shared with her, we could have had a more authentic friendship.
And can I pause you right there? Why do you think you didn't share with her? Do you know?
Because I didn't want to be not perfect.
Okay. I think that's very honest. Yeah. I think we all do that at different times to different degrees. Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, what will she think about me if I tell her this, and et cetera is going on?
It's safer for me in this relationship to tell you what I want to tell you. And
Right.
I think we don't even do that on purpose sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. Okay. So
and
yes.
I mean, even now with even more with Instagram and Facebook and all these other Pinterest, all these social media platforms, what we see is the perfection, but that's not real life. It just isn't. No one is perfect. Everybody has something. And if I want to be completely loved and completely accepted, the only way through that is to be completely known. And if I want somebody to accept me, then I need to be willing to accept them. If I've got stuff going on in my life, I need to be able to share that.
I think that the authenticity piece is so important because of two things. Like I think about your not being authentic with your friend and how that hurt your friend, right? I heard you saying that. But I also think it gets in the way of what we most want, because we most want, as you said so well, we most want to be known.
Right.
But if we're not, who knows you? When you're carrying around something heavy and you're the only one that knows it, then you never will feel like anyone really sees you or knows you, right? Because they can't. And then you believe the lie, maybe tempted to anyway, if they really knew me, then. Right. And so I think this idea of authenticity, and you're so right, that doesn't mean that everything in our lives is fair game for everyone. Right.
Yeah. I mean, use your filter, people.
Yes.
Please.
Don't send me a letter. No. But seriously, but to be able to have cultivated a group of close friends that will, what I call hold your stories and make space for you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's another part of the whole midlife piece is when I was in my 20s and even 30s, I had to be perfect. And I didn't, that was basically it. I didn't forgive people as easily. I let the small things kind of just become big things when they're not really. So as I've matured, I hope anyway, that I've kind of learned some of these lessons, and I hope I can help other people who are going through the same thing.
I think that's great. Yeah. Read that scripture. We're about out of time. I'm watching our timer, but read that scripture that you started with again at the beginning. It was from 1 Corinthians, right? About the compassion.
2 Corinthians.
Sorry. Thank you.
2 Corinthians 1.
Okay.
Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our afflictions, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. And then skipping a few verses, our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in our comfort.
God comforts us and then fills us with something, and it's possible for us then to overflow that filling onto other people, and especially the people when we speak their language, right? It is crazy to me how I have a couple of friends who have gone through what I would say is just like unusual. There are things in my life that I'm like, to have a friend who has gone through something so similar when it feels very like unique, or I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely.
for God to connect us in our suffering, if you will, is such a blessing, because,
Yes.
there's somebody that just gets that something hurts you, or they get when something in the world presses on something,
Mhm.
and what a gift that is. And sometimes I think he connects people. I know he does. He connects people who can
Absolutely.
just share in each other's struggles. And so I want to thank you for being that kind of person, who's really wanting to try to send a message of hope and encouragement as we face some of these big things midlife. And I think this has been really fun. Anything else? A word of encouragement for the woman who is kind of in that place and it seems like it's hopeless right now?
Hang in there.
Yeah.
Really, just hang in there. And on the really hard days, just give yourself grace just to do the bare
Yeah.
minimum. You
Mhm.
don't have to do it all.
Give yourself grace. I'm so bad at that. I appreciate you
Me
saying
too.
that today. I'm
Me too.
bad at that. I do. Yes. I can pour it out abundantly usually on
Mhm.
other people way
Mhm.
before I
Yep.
can. Not that I'm abundantly gracious with everyone, don't get me wrong, but I usually do not give it to myself, and certainly not the way that I need it. And so I appreciate that word of encouragement. So
Yeah,
Bethany
absolutely.
can be followed at BethanyLaShell.com. I'll put that in the
Mhm.
notes today. Anywhere else that you want to send people to follow? That's where your blog is, right? At
Mhm. Yep.
BethanyLaShell.com. Yep.
I'm on Facebook at Bethany LaShell, author educator, and
Okay.
I'm on Instagram at Bethany LaShell author.
Bethany, this has been fun, and I'm so glad that you joined us this week. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Angie. I enjoyed talking to you.
Until next time. I loved Bethany's reminder that when you find out Jesus is all you have, you find out Jesus is all you need. We all experience trials, and she's so right that God does not waste our suffering, but it is up to us whether or not we allow Him to grow us closer to Him through it. Thank you so much for listening. I pray that wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.